What if AI could understand us better than we do ourselves? I mean, that's a pretty wild thought, right?
It's definitely something to think about, especially now with OpenAI's latest release, GPT 4.5.
Yeah, we've got their announcement blog post and the detailed system card, and they're both packed with information about this new language model. But
Mm.
what really jumped out at me was this focus on unsupervised learning and training for better human collaboration. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a big change. We aren't just talking about making things a little better here and there. It's more like a fundamental shift in how AI learns and how it interacts.
Okay, so let's break down this unsupervised learning thing.
Sure.
It sounds kind of complicated.
Yeah, it can be.
How would you explain it to someone who isn't, a tech expert?
Hmm. Okay. How about this? Imagine like a kid learning about the world, but without someone giving them a bunch of rules.
Okay,
They just observe, right? They experiment, they kind of draw conclusions based on patterns they see.
got it.
Well, that's kind of what GPT 4.5 does with tons and tons of data, but instead of blocks and toys, it's going through text and code looking for those relationships and making those connections on its own.
So it's not just, following instructions.
No.
It's actually learning from the data itself, kind of like figuring out the rules of grammar
Yeah.
by reading thousands of books.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. It's that ability to learn without being told exactly what to do
Mhm.
that really sets GPT 4.5 apart
Okay.
from those earlier models like OpenAI O1 and O3 Mini, which relied more on like step-by-step instructions.
Ah, I see. So it's more about like intuitive learning than just processing information.
Yeah, you could say that.
But does that actually make it smarter? I mean, how do we even measure intelligence in AI?
Right. Well, that's a great question and a tough one to answer definitively, but
Okay.
let me give you an example. GPT 4.5 was asked about something that we really have no definitive answer for. The origin of language, like the very first language.
Oh, wow.
I mean, think about it. Languages evolved way before we had written records. So we're really working with limited data and a lot of speculation.
So we may never really know for sure how language first emerged.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so interesting.
What?
Because GPT 4.5, using its vast knowledge base, didn't just say, I don't know.
Huh.
It actually offered a really nuanced explanation,
Oh, yeah.
acknowledging the gaps in our knowledge, but still it was able to synthesize information from different fields like history, linguistics, even anthropology.
Well, wow. So it's not just repeating facts, it's actually forming its own hypotheses, like connecting the dots in a way that even experts might find insightful.
That's exactly what we're seeing. And this is reflected in the system card too,
Oh, really?
where GPT 4.5 shows this big improvement in simple QA accuracy.
Simple QA accuracy.
Yeah, it's basically a measure of how well it can answer those straightforward but still tough questions that need a lot of background knowledge.
Okay.
And it's now at 62.5%, meaning it can answer those complex knowledge-based questions with like remarkable accuracy.
That is impressive.
And here's the really cool part. Its hallucination rate, those times when it makes stuff up or gets facts wrong,
Right.
that's way down to 37.1%.
So it's becoming more reliable and less likely to make stuff up.
Exactly.
That's good to know, especially if it's going to be helping us with important tasks.
Right.
But what about this human connection aspect? Can AI really understand how we feel and, respond in a way that actually feels human?
Well, that's where the training for human collaboration really comes in.
Okay.
OpenAI has been using these really innovative techniques to make GPT 4.5 more in tune with what we need and what we intend.
So it's not just processing words.
No, it's more like reading between the lines, understanding the emotional subtext of a conversation.
Wow. So it's like it has a higher EQ, being able to sense the mood and adjust its communication style.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing. But do we have any proof that this actually works? I mean, do people really find it more relatable or enjoyable to interact with?
Well, we do. OpenAI did these evaluations, and they showed that human testers actually preferred GPT 4.5
Over.
over its predecessor, GPT 4.0, in 63.2% of cases.
That's a pretty big difference. What kind of interactions were they testing?
All kinds of things, from casual conversations to problem-solving tasks.
Hmm.
In one scenario, someone even told GPT 4.5 that they were feeling down after failing a test.
Oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah, me too. And it's interesting how it responded.
So how did GPT 4.5 handle that?
Well, it didn't just offer generic advice or try to downplay how the person was feeling.
Right.
It responded with empathy, like acknowledging the disappointment,
Right.
but then gently suggesting different ways to approach the situation.
So it's like learning to be more supportive and understanding,
Yeah.
which seems really important if AI is going to play a bigger role in our lives.
Definitely. And this is where it gets really interesting, you know?
How so?
Because if AI can actually grasp those nuances of human emotion, it raises some really big questions about how we can use this technology.
Not just to solve problems, but to actually connect with each other on a deeper level. Wow, that's a fascinating thought. But before we get too carried away with all the possibilities,
Yeah.
let's talk about the practical side of things.
Okay.
What are some real-world ways that GPT 4.5 can actually be used?
Oh, there are so many. Oh, man. I mean, the applications are vast, from writing to coding to problem solving, communication, you name it. GPT 4.5 is really pushing the limits of what AI can do.
Give me an example.
Okay, so in the OpenAI blog post, they describe how GPT 4.5 was able to actually identify a painting based on like a really vague description
What?
that a user gave. And this shows, it's improved world knowledge and it's not hallucinating as much like we talked about before.
Right, so it's not just spitting back information, it's actually understanding and interpreting complex concepts,
And
even when it doesn't have all the pieces.
yes, and it can also adapt its communication style to fit different needs.
Okay.
Like the blog post also gives an example where GPT 4.5 generated two totally different responses to the same prompt about space exploration.
Mm-hmm.
One was like a soupy, concise, factual summary, just the facts, and the other was more creative and evocative, almost like a poem.
So it can be both informative and engaging, depending on what the user is looking for.
Exactly. It's pretty versatile, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a writer's dream come true, honestly.
It could definitely revolutionize how we approach writing, whether it's, creative content or technical reports or whatever.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what jobs will even exist in the future.
For sure, and it's not just writing either.
Okay.
TBT 4.5 is also really good at programming. It can handle those complicated multi-step workflows, even generate complex code.
So from writing novels to building software, it seems like GPT 4.5 is becoming a powerful tool for all sorts of creative and technical work. But with all this power, there has to be a responsibility that comes along with it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the system card mentioned new safety measures and aligning AI with human values. What does that actually look like?
Absolutely. As AI models become more and more capable, it's critical to address potential risks and make sure the development is responsible. OpenAI has been very active on this front.
Okay.
They're using new supervision techniques in GPT 4.5's development to minimize the risk of harmful or misleading outputs.
So they're trying to prevent GPT 4.5 from being used for bad stuff.
Exactly. And they're also testing how resilient it is to other kinds of attacks.
Like what?
Like, someone trying to trick it into revealing sensitive information or doing something that could compromise user privacy.
That's good. It sounds like they're really trying to stay ahead of the game when it comes to AI safety. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of our listeners are probably wondering how they can actually try GPT 4.5 for themselves. What can you tell us about its availability?
Well, the good news is that GPT 4.5 is already available for ChatGPT Pro users.
Oh, wow.
ChatGPT Plus and Team users will have access next week, and then Enterprise and Edu users will get it the week after that.
That's great. It sounds like they're rolling it out pretty quickly. But are there any limitations in terms of what it can do? I know you mentioned earlier that it's still mostly text-based.
Yeah, that's right. Right now, GPT 4.5 doesn't have those advanced multimodal features.
Multimodal.
Yeah, like voice input, video integration, or screen sharing.
Right.
OpenAI is definitely working on bringing those things in, but for now, it's mainly interacting through text.
I can see those features being really useful down the line, like having a conversation with AI and being able to share visual information at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even with those current limitations, it still sounds like GPT 4.5 is a huge step forward.
Oh, it is, for sure. And for those who want to explore what it can do beyond the regular ChatGPT interface, OpenAI is also giving API access to developers for all paid usage tiers.
Meaning developers will be able to integrate GPT 4.5 into their own apps and services.
Exactly. It opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Like what?
Like creating new educational tools or even more sophisticated customer service chatbots. It's really exciting to think about.
It really is. We started this deep dive by asking, what if AI could understand us better than we understand ourselves? Do you think we're actually getting closer to that?
It's a really profound question, and it's definitely worth thinking about. I mean, as AI systems like GPT 4.5 become more and more skilled at understanding our language, our emotions, our intentions, It's not crazy to think that they could give us new insights into our own behavior and motivations.
So it's like we're using AI to hold up a mirror to ourselves
Exactly.
and reflect back our own complexities.
It's a powerful thought, and it highlights why it's so crucial to approach AI development with a sense of responsibility and a
Yes.
real willingness to explore its potential, not just for solving those practical problems, but for expanding our understanding of ourselves and the world.
So what does all this mean for the everyday person? Should we be excited, apprehensive, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think a healthy mix of both is probably the right approach. I mean, AI isn't some futuristic concept anymore. It's becoming a part of our lives, and systems like GPT 4.5 are a big step forward in its evolution.
So what can our listeners do to stay informed and engaged with this rapidly changing landscape?
I think the best thing to do is just explore GPT 4.5, experiment with what it can do, consider the potential benefits and the challenges.
Don't be afraid to really dive in, learn, experiment, and share your thoughts.
Exactly.
Because the future of AI isn't set in stone.
Right.
It's something we're creating together every step of the way.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it really is a lot to think about. And AI is moving so fast, it's hard to keep up sometimes.
It really is remarkable how quickly things are evolving.
Right.
And, it makes sense to feel that mix of excitement and maybe a little bit of uncertainty, too. I mean, we're talking about something that could completely change the world as we know it.
Yeah, it's not just like a new phone or a cool app or
Whoa,
something.
not at all.
This is much bigger. This could change how we work, how we learn, how we connect with each other, maybe even how we think.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to approach this whole thing with a sense of responsibility,
Hmm.
to make sure that we're using AI for good to benefit humanity.
It feels like we're at this kind of crossroads
Yeah, I agree.
with this incredibly powerful tool, and it's up to us to figure out how to use it.
That's a great point. We have this choice to make, right?
Right.
Do we use AI to boost our creativity, to solve those really tough problems, to understand the world and ourselves better? Or
All right.
do we let it become something that divides us, something that manipulates or controls us?
It's a big responsibility, and it feels like it's on all of us.
It is on all of
It's
us.
not just the developers or the researchers, it's everyone.
Right.
We need to stay informed. We need to be part of this conversation. We need to demand that AI is used ethically and responsibly.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
can't just sit back and watch this happen. We have to be active participants in shaping the future of AI.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into GPT 4.5, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing is to be curious.
Right.
Explore what AI can do, but don't just accept everything you see. You know, Ask questions, challenge the assumptions, and be part of the conversation.
Don't be afraid to dive in, learn, experiment, and then share what you find.
Exactly, because the future of AI isn't already decided.
Yeah.
It's something that we're all building together.
That's a really good point. So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions because the journey into the world of AI is just getting started and we're all on it together. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we'll be back soon with another exciting topic. Until then, happy learning.